Hi, everybody. Jean Humbrecht with Humbrecht Law, criminal and traffic defense attorney in Manassas, Virginia. Welcome to my weekly Wednesday local business spotlight. Today, I have a very special guest, Miss Ladan Madrasahi. I hope I pronounced that right, with
Perfect.
Leave It to Me. Ladan is the proud owner of Leave It to Me, an event management company that provides clients with the support they need during the important milestones in their loved ones' lives or afterlife, so guests can celebrate them while Leave It to Me takes care of the event logistics. Leave It to Me plans and produces in-person, hybrid, and virtual life milestone events. By leaving all the details to them, clients can experience concierge service and be a guest at their own events. This is especially important with end-of-life celebrations, where event organizers and guests should have peace of mind that everything is taken care of, so their sole focus can be celebrating their loved one's legacy. Leave It to Me's final gift service helps individuals through the difficult task of gathering information and preparation for the end of their life. There are many tools that help pull together documents, passwords, and other important information. The final gift will include those items along with a comprehensive plan outlining exactly how they want to be honored. With years of project and event management experience, their team will keep you accountable so that you can remain on track, completing the gathering of unique personal details like favorite songs, memories, and pictures. All right, so Ladan, at this point, I want to turn it over to you. If you could tell everybody a little bit more about the company and how you got started. And I'm also curious to know, exactly what other types, all the different events that you help people plan.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on this. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. And basically, like a good immigrant child of Iranian parents, I studied international finance because, it wasn't a doctor or a dentist or an engineer. So I went into international finance, but graduated from that and just worked in telecom for 20 years, but had a real passion for event management. And so I did events on the side. I planned my first event when I was 17 and I caught the bug then. And so I did events all the way through. And when thankfully it was a wonderful layoff that happened for me, the last telecom company I was with, November of 2017, I made a decision to go into events no matter what. And when I wasn't getting hired, I decided to start my own business. And when the business idea that I originally had seemed, everyone seemed like it was supposed to be a good idea, but it wasn't the right fit. And I went to a funeral shortly after that. And at the funeral, I realized that it's not much different than what a bride gets for as far as venue needs to be selected. There's flowers, there's potentially music, there's a member of the clergy. There's so much stuff that matches up to what a funeral requires, but a funeral may be put together in a few days or a week, and the bride gets a whole year, and the bride and groom get a coordinator, a planner. They get all sorts of things. And so I went home and researched and realized that people that are planning end of life events generally only have their place of worship, maybe has some people that help with that, or someone in the family has to figure it out last minute on their own. So with finding that there are only a handful of companies around, I looked all over the US that really specialize in that. I decided that maybe that would be the route that I would go. But as I know nothing about death and dying at that point, I knew nothing. I put the idea away, and then someone actually asked me to plan a celebration of life event. And then I thought, okay, well, it's another sign. And then someone asked me to plan a memorial reception. So with the three callings of like, hey, you need to do this, I jumped headfirst into only doing end of life events and decided that I couldn't handle that. So I changed it quickly to life milestones to include everything from sunrise to sunset. So baby showers all the way through to the end of life events. And so birthday parties, anniversary parties, but I tend to like the more obscure event that people don't think to celebrate. So I do divorce parties. That's one of my specialties. And then also, let's see here, retirement parties, green card parties, coming out parties, anything you can think of. I'm actually planning a coming of age party for my daughter next month. because she recently became a little woman, and so she's going to have a party, and we're going to talk about lots of, women of different ages talking about things. So I, like I said, will help with any kind of event, but my main goal as an event person is to not come in and say, oh, I think you should have this kind of flower, or I think you should do this. I'm not an event designer. I'm more of a coming in, listening, and the person knows what type of party they want to have or what type of celebration of life for their loved one, but they may not necessarily have the experience. So that's where I go in with, the one I had last weekend, for example. She was doing an event when I was just hosting the online portion of it, but she had a bunch of people coming to the house. And so I just reminded her little things like, don't forget to turn the AC down like an hour before, like really crank it, because it's going to get hot. And you make sure you get the coffee brewing before the guests arrive, and make sure you get enough ice, like little things that I just picked up over, 30 years of planning events. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what the event side of the business is. And then you did a great job explaining the final gift product. And that is essentially marrying my project management experience of 20 years with the event management experience to take the important paperwork aspect of planning for your own end of life, and doing what estate lawyers and other people, have all sorts of websites that help you, tell you what documents you need, but they don't keep you accountable. So that's why 50% of the US population doesn't actually have a will, because everyone knows they need one, but they don't do it. Right. So, and then also just reminding people and putting them in touch with people to buy life insurance, or pre-buy, your funeral plot, like, or prepay for your cremation, little things like that, that everyone could find out on their own, but this would just keep them on task. And then the other part of it is I was motivated by John McCain's funeral. That, I mean, talk about wanting what, like really thinking it through. So so that's the last part, and I want to bring fun to that process. And you talked about your own death, and dying is definitely not a fun topic, but not taking yourself too seriously, thinking about basically the fact that this is your final party. You don't get to be there, but plan it out. Is it going to be open bar? Is it going to be a Viking funeral? What do you want to make of it? I actually found out that in Maine they were passing a law to make Viking funerals something that people could do, and I know several people that want one, so I let them know so that hey, we can actually do it. So,
Can you tell everybody what a Viking funeral is?
from what I understand, they put you out like on a boat, like in those, back hundreds of years ago. You're out on the boat, and then they shoot an arrow with the flame and then light the body on fire, right? So I'm really not sure how many people have the expertise to do that, but there are definitely a lot of people in my life that have joked about that's what they want, and their poor spouse has been told, like, hey, I need a Viking funeral, make it happen. So
Yeah, probably not the route I would want to go.
no.
That'd be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, it's nice because the funeral industry is being really disrupted, right? It's not the normal thing that, 50 years ago, cremation wasn't even at the high levels that it's at now. There are a lot of people that choose to be cremated, but a lot of people aren't associated with the church any longer, or a synagogue or a mosque. So they're having celebration of life events. And now with everyone thinking about the environment, green funerals are a new thing, and you can actually get your ashes and put them in a fire, like a work display, and have them go up. You can have them put in a coral reef. There's all sorts of new things. Plant a tree. So most people don't know all of this stuff because I'm the crazy one that's researching this stuff, not everyone else. So and the concierge service, just to kind of round it out, I love people. I love networking, and I help with people that might need, like, to find hospice or to find anything regarding death and dying. So I have a vast network of people I can introduce. But I also have, like, for example, one of my concierge clients, her father was given a terminal diagnosis, but thankfully it's gone 2+ years now since we started working together, and he's doing fine, which makes me so happy. But she herself knows how connected I am, and all the venues I know, and the things that I'm able to give that service, help her out. So she just contacted me last week and needed a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I happen to know a multitude of them. But in talking to her, knowing that she's looking for a female advisor, she had, X number of things she outlined briefly what she was looking for. But knowing her personality, I was able to give her a list of 4 different women that I know. And I think between, of the 4, she's going to find the perfect fit for her. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to call 20, 30 people. 4 is a higher number than I normally would have given, but with something like that, especially when you're planning an event that is in the middle of the grief of planning a funeral, you don't want to call 5 funeral homes. You don't want to call 5 florists. So having someone like me that's already vetted so many people, and then based on a conversation with the client, the very customized, individualized, um, it's not always going to be the same videographer. It's not always going to be the same venue. It's based on their needs and how they want to honor their loved one. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that something that you help people plan prior to the death, or do you come in after the person has already passed away and help plan it really quickly?
Yeah, so I can do both ways, but during COVID is when I found out that honestly, people have to know about my service before
Mm-hmm.
their loved one passes. I discovered that in the midst of grief, adding me to the list of things they have to do,
Mm-hmm.
even though I would alleviate so much of the work that they need to do, it's just almost impossible to hear and I don't do a sales pitch obviously, but to hear
Mm-hmm.
what my services are, it's not the right time. So I found that people hearing about me when their loved one is maybe in hospice or being treated in a memory care facility or something like that. So they have time to kind of think it through and work with me
Mm-hmm.
beforehand. And then also, if it's possible, if the loved one hasn't, um, is still lucid and able to have a conversation with them, it'd be great to know if the loved one hasn't already shared, like what exactly they want. And that's the main reason why the product, the pre-planning product, I feel is so important, is getting people to understand that you are truly gifting your loved ones by doing this yourself in advance, so that in the midst of severe grief that you're not like, you don't have 5 siblings or 3 siblings going, I know mom would have wanted to be in an open casket and wearing this dress. And then the other person saying, well, you were absolutely wrong. Mom told me she wanted this, so having that documented and outlined so that you don't have to have the infighting. And because I've seen it, I've heard about it. I've also heard from people that their loved ones maybe didn't tell them that they had a funeral, like they bought the cemetery plot or they had a life insurance policy, and these people went and they like paid for another cemetery plot and then later found out that no, mom and dad actually had it, right? So again, not really important to do these things if you don't share that you've done
Yeah.
it. So
I never even thought about that. Somebody purchasing or having purchased for them 2 plots. Never even occurred to me that that would
yeah,
happen.
so these are all the little things that over the time, the last 3.5 years of actually being open to having conversations about death and dying, and also going to places, and hearing about the thing that fascinated me was talking to a funeral director at a very fancy funeral place in DC where all the presidents kind of go when it's their time. She told me that prepaying for your funeral is one of the few times that you can do that in life, where like I couldn't go in right now to a BMW dealership and say, here is $50,000. This money is going to prepay for a car 20 years from now that would probably be 100,000 by then, or God knows what price, right? But
Mm-hmm.
with a funeral, you can actually use today's pricing to pay and get it all done and
Ah,
utilize utilize it at any time. So I thought that was a really interesting way of getting people to think about it, that like, yeah, while you have the money right now, pay for it so that 20, 30 years from now your loved ones aren't trying to scramble to find, because the average cost of a funeral is a lot of money. I mean, at least 10,000. The bare minimum is going to
wow.
be, so, and then we're talking the people I've been in touch with and in this area with a little bit more money and the costs involved, we're talking like $25,000, $30,000.
Wow.
So yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah. No, and that's why a lot of people go with cremation, because it is, because buying a cemetery plot and you have to buy the, all sorts of things other than the coffin. Like I didn't realize that it's more than just the coffin,
Mhm.
right? And then funeral homes, of course, have, you know, I'm not saying they're not all like trying to, they're not all bad people. They're good people there, right? And they're there for you in a really tough time, but they're going to want to sell you some add-ons, right? So do you really need the extra handles for the coffin that are fancy, like, or maybe you do, maybe you don't, but like knowing that the siblings don't have to, or even the parent, that's left with their kiddos having to fight about it, like, and you don't want to like uh, basically argue over money at a time like that, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I know earlier you were mentioning something about hybrid events. So
Yeah.
during,
So in your description, and before we change course there, just want to say to anybody that's watching, feel free to type your questions into the chat so we can get Loudon to answer them now. Or if you're watching the replay later and have a question, type it in and we'll get notification and Loudon can get back to you. So if there's anything that sparks your interest or that you want clarification on. But yeah, so what I wanted Loudon to talk about is so her company does hybrid, virtual, and in-person events. So I'm wondering, my first question is, did you do hybrid and virtual pre-COVID? And then how has COVID changed everything? Because I think a lot of people don't know. We get an invitation to an event. We don't know if it's in person. We don't know if it's in Zoom. We're always double checking. We don't know what the requirements are. So can you kind of tell us about how
sure.
that has changed?
Yeah, no, I definitely, as a project manager, did, lots of things on WebEx and different virtual platforms, right? But never a party. It never occurred to me really to do a lot of virtual things, because I love the energy of being in person with an event, right? And the running around and helping and all that. But COVID hits, and I'm in a, as my mom says, I live in la la land. I truly thought COVID would end within like a month or two. So yeah, I didn't really like freak out, but as it became apparent, I think it was like April something, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, am I ever going to be able to do a birthday party again or anything else? And that's when I had a friend was basically telling me on the phone how sad she was that her 50th birthday party couldn't happen and the
Mhm.
trip couldn't happen. And so I said, well, I'm just going to throw you a party on Zoom. And so from there I began doing Zoom birthday parties, and even managed to pull off a surprise party, which, like, I was blown away that the lady coordinating it for her daughter, the two of us together coming up with this, and it was really fun. And anniversary parties, birthday, I started dabbling in doing things like 70th birthday parties where people pre-recorded their tributes to the birthday person, and then I figured out ways to do quizzes so the people on Zoom could actually say, like, could have bragging rights that who knows the birthday girl or boy the best because they went through the quiz, and they're the ones that won. And yeah, anyway, so I really enjoyed that. But at one point in networking, I don't remember when it was exactly, one of the videographers that I know, she asked me, because I did so much research about how when COVID ended and or would start wrapping up, that events would be hybrid for sure, that there would be
Mhm.
in person people ready to go back, but then also because a lot of the networking things, a lot of the things I joined things that were taking place in California and other places, and there was no way I could be there in person. So
Yeah.
I knew that hybrid was going to be a model, and then the event world actually argues about what hybrid really means. And so that was another thing. And it was really refreshing for me, actually, that how much I got to read and learn about the future of the event industry. And I enjoyed it, because during the 20 years in the telecom industry, I didn't want to read about VoIP or this kind of system or whatever. I could care less, but I love all things events. So anyway, reading all about all that, and I get on the phone with this wonderful videographer, and she says, have you heard of this thing called an Owl 360 Pro? And I said no, and I Googled it right away. And I'm one of those technology early adopter kind of people. So on the bell curve, I'm the one that's going to take a risk pretty early on. And she said, hey, check it out. And I did and fell in love with it. It's this awesome camera that has, it goes around 360 degrees. So when you put it in the middle of a meeting, for example, if someone's speaking, they can, the owl will pick up and bring that person on the screen. So on the Zoom screen, you'll see at the very top that there'll be the full panoramic view of the room. But then as individuals speak, so if you have the person on the podium, it'll have one of the cameras will be looking there. And then as somebody else speaks, it'll kind of split the screen. And so when I saw that, I think it was a Tuesday. By Thursday, I had decided I was buying it. And I brought
Mhm.
it up to my phenomenal co-working space, the two co-owners, and told them about it. And by the end of the call that we were on, they decided that we would go in on it together. So Miss Hoots is something that we share. She sits in a locker when we're not using her. But I take her to hybrid networking events, hybrid events in the area that I can set up. And in the room, people can watch the folks that are online. And
Mhm.
people online are able to see what's happening in the, for example, we're in the Belmont Country Club for one of the events. And then in addition to that, over the past weekend, for example, the memorial reception, so the celebration of life event, she hired a videographer and we set up multiple computers in the home on her end. And then I had multiple computers on my end and was able to facilitate having everyone that couldn't be there in person talk. And now she has a recording of that she can compile a video that has both the in-person and the Zoom participants will all be saying nice things about her husband that passed away.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was wondering how I've been to a couple hybrid events, but they weren't parties, they weren't celebrations, they were just meetings. Um, and yeah, not a huge fan. For me, it's one or the other. So it's interesting to hear because people probably also have had that experience, or if they have not been to a hybrid, they can't really imagine what it's like. But it sounds like every if you're watching a Zoom meeting where people are just there, a bunch of people in person and there's a few people online, the people that are in person, you don't know who's talking and it's kind of confusing. So this Owl 360 and the way that you were able to set it up sounds like it's a much more enjoyable experience than just the previous.
Yeah, and then having the people in person having a screen to be able to watch the people online makes it so much more interactive. And so, for example, the one networking event that I do, they have a drawing for the people that are participating that they win prizes. And for the first few months that we did hybrid, we would first do the online folks and pull the prizes for them, but the people in the room could see everyone on the big projection screen and who won, and they'd get all excited. But then we had originally mapped out that once they got their prizes, the online people, that we would just disconnect Zoom. And they wrote in, a bunch of people wrote in and said, no, we want to see the excitement in the room of when those folks win. And so it was actually really nice. Everyone pretty much stayed on, and they got to see that. Sorry, so they got to see that. This event has so many gifts that go out, so it was quite entertaining. But
Mhm,
if it wasn't for that big screen, it wouldn't be as interactive. But
mhm.
now we're able to actually, the networking event isn't going to be local anymore. We're able to open it up to have people from all over the country join. And to me, that was part of the Zoom event last weekend with the memorial or the celebration of life event. There were folks calling in from the middle of the mountains in California and from Europe. And they were just so thrilled that they didn't have to miss being part of the
Mhm,
celebration. So
mhm.
yeah, it feels good to know that, yes, the COVID experience, nobody's ever going to say, hey, I really loved it. But knowing that there were some things that were very beneficial, like I feel so much closer to my family around the world that during COVID, we jumped on Zoom every 2 weeks, and we're
Mhm.
continuing to do that. And it's nice to connect and have a platform that everyone has learned how to use, old and
Yeah.
young. So,
Yeah. and I also wanted to mention earlier, my birthday is April, early April. So right after COVID hit, everything was closed. I couldn't go anywhere. So I actually organized my own Zoom birthday happy hour. It was weird, but everybody had a lot of fun. And we stayed longer than we would have if we went out because some of us were on for like 4 hours.
Oh, yeah. And you can drink because you're in your own house. The first one I did, I made everyone that toasted the birthday girl, and people were toasting from all over the US. She had to take a drink every time someone toasted her. She was so drunk by the end of the Zoom, but it was beautiful because she just, was already home. So,
That's true.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Nobody made me do that. But I had a friend from New York. Yeah, next time. I had a friend from New York City and a friend from upstate New York when I went to college with, when I went to law school with, and then a couple people local. But yeah, so my old college roommate, I never would have been able to see her on my birthday if it wasn't for Zoom.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was it was good. I liked the fact that I was able to do that. And then we ordered food from I ordered food from Carrabba's, which I used to go to in
Nice.
person. I do go again, but I ordered food, and then one of the bartenders there actually signed on to the Zoom, so he signed on from working at the restaurant because he was like loading up all the food and everything. So it was really fun.
That is fun.
He just had his phone and he was walking around.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and it's so much fun. You can definitely do these things on your own, but what I've enjoyed is when someone told me this when I helped take care of their Thanksgiving Zoom for them, that the family all behaved more because there is a stranger on, right? But also, I'm very inquisitive and asking all these questions. And so everybody from grandma to the grandkids were having to explain to me who they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people were jumping in and like sharing stories, and then having someone like me to mute them if they're talking or they're doing something else. It takes from the party host or whoever's running the Zoom, or having, as if it's a family thing, or even with friends, like you don't want to piss off your friends, be like, oh my God, you muted me. But like if the crazy lady from Leave It to Me is muting them, it's not, they don't take offense, but it's also kind of nice because you can shower the birthday man or woman with like my asking them to all sing, or my ask, it doesn't have that same weirdness to, okay, everyone sing for me. So yeah, it's been interesting. What I really love about it is pretty much anytime someone's my client, they have to be my friend afterwards. I stay in touch with everyone. So it's a really neat thing to be part of this special occasion, and I really think everyone should be celebrating as many things as they can. So especially the weird things, I'll help them. I don't mind. I don't mind taboo events.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that before you sign off, the taboo talks.
Okay.
But about the events, I'm wondering, like, what are you noticing people are doing now? So first of all, Loudon and I are both in Northern Virginia, or well, most of the time. But so I guess I ask a question and I think of other things. You help people internationally plan events, or throughout the United States?
So I would love to help more people internationally, but
Okay.
for now it seems to be all over the US and Canada. But I do have, the background of having gone to school for international business. So I have friends that live all over. So for personal things, I'm always having other people from other parts of the world on Zoom. But currently I have not done any events overseas. But with my background in international business and having studied other cultures and being aware, I definitely feel like I have a special ability to kind of help people with events that aren't maybe, like somebody's wedding from another country, or even the celebration of life, because so many countries and cultures have different traditions, right? So so yeah, no, I definitely would love to do that. For now, I'm hoping to just be able to spread the message, since people don't typically have someone helping with end of life. So making that be the more of a norm, right? And not having people, I've had people that don't even want to hear about what I'm doing with my business because they don't want to talk about death and dying, because there's this fear, like, oh, let me not talk about that. I might, I don't know if they could think they're going to jinx themselves. Or
Yeah.
there was this one thing that I read. It was this funny meme. It said something like, just like talking about sex doesn't make you pregnant, talking about death doesn't make you dead. So I thought that was clever, but there are some people that still have that fear.
Yeah, I know it's an uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to ask you, with at least in Virginia, with things starting to open up, things are not fully opened up like they used to be pre-COVID, I should say. So I just wanted to get your opinion on how long you see hybrid events going on, where you see the industry going in the future. And then in terms of the international, I was just thinking of that as we were talking. If you can't afford to, travel for a funeral or travel for a wedding, if people are you think people are going to start utilizing this more even when things are completely open back up and we can travel?
I think so because, for example, with the convention industry and a lot of these things, where when you start thinking about flying to California or something to attend some sort of conference, where
Mhm.
you add all the flight cost and the hotel and everything else, if that convention can just be live streamed, or the interactive events of having a camera such as the Owl 360 Pro in the room, and having where the panel, there's people adding to it that are online as well. Like,
Mhm.
I think I'd rather maybe not fly, right? And save
Mhm.
that money to do something else. But there will still be people like me that are also very extroverted and need to be around people, right? And you can get more done when you're sitting
Mhm.
next to someone. I still don't think that's going to go away. But as we become more and more open to being online a lot, because in the beginning everybody was still just unsure, but now we know, like, to be a little bit more, give a little more grace to, if there's a technology issue, or if, like, my cat is just lurking right there, like, I know she's going to jump, but, like, people aren't as rigid about it. Like, for example, when I did online events in 2015 for project management stuff, and I would be hosting something on WebEx with clients or whatever, if my kid made a noise, my boss would actually send me a note like, "You got to keep the kids quiet. That's very unprofessional." And now, like, there's no way anyone's sending a note to anyone about an
Mhm.
unprofessional, moment, because our entire lives have been unprofessional for a year and a half, right? So yeah, I truly believe that. Um, it might not be a huge percentage of people. It might still be a number around 10% or 15%, but events that are going to make both the people that are in the room and the people online feel like it's a lot more inclusive and forward thinking, right? Going right back to the way it was is an option, but not doing it that way and making it be more open. It's almost like how we've progressed to have people with alternate abilities. Like, now it makes, nobody thinks twice about getting an interpreter to be on stage for a big event. Like, it's part of what's normal now. So I'm thinking it might end up being what or becomes the norm, is to think about those that can't travel, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And do you think people will incorporate that into their weddings and other events, like that are maybe overseas, that people can't travel to, or can't really afford to travel to?
Yeah, I mean, I had so what I always joke around about is that even though I do events from sunrise to sunset,
Mhm.
I don't do weddings because I do divorces and I don't want to double dip, right? But during COVID, I actually did help with a hybrid event, a wedding in Southern Virginia, and seeing that the people that couldn't make it, like, how excited they were just to watch the ceremony live, and then be able to talk to the mother of, I think the mother of the groom came on camera at one point, and it wasn't as interactive as maybe what it could have been. The bride and groom didn't hop on camera, but
Mhm.
the people that couldn't be there were able to chat amongst themselves and leave notes for the bride and groom.
Oh.
And yeah, and so, and that's part of what I've incorporated too, is taking comments from, like, the virtual guest book and creating sort of from the chat, creating a virtual guest book, and same thing for the bride and groom. And but yeah, I think with Facebook and Facebook Live and everything else, there's all sorts of ways to have people watch. but it's one way, right? So I mean, I
Mhm.
saw Facebook feeds for weddings. I was at one, and unfortunately, the camera was set up crooked, or the wrong way. So we all had to watch like this, right? And
Wow.
so, because you don't have somebody managing it, so I think that the hybrid piece, and like setting up just a tripod and a camera to live stream the nuptials, may not be that exciting for people to
Mhm.
log in. But if you can make it more interactive, and people having the ability to create like upload videos, perhaps live to, I don't know, I'm not really creative
Mhm.
in that way, but basically, like, just having the ability to even do breakout rooms, and doing things. But who knows, the sky's the limit, and
Mhm.
there are so many virtual um, event companies now, like too
Mhm.
many, if you ask me. I had a demo today with a company that wanted me to pay $24,000 for 5 events. And I'm like, I wish I no. I was like, it's not going to work for what I do, because but that's fully interactive, amazing stuff, way more than what Zoom offers. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so yeah, I do think it's here to stay. So get your good cameras, get your ring light, get get some things,
I've got a
and
ring light back
yeah,
there.
I think we all do pretty much now after this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting to hear it because, like I said, I've only been to the one hybrid event, and it was a networking event. So I didn't even know about all of these options and what a hybrid event could look like. So I think it's really beneficial that you're telling people that, because it helps not only the people that are planning the event, that are trying to, take into consideration people's initially comfort level with COVID. Maybe some
Mhm.
people aren't comfortable being back in person, but then also, like I mentioned, in the past, if there was a wedding, in California, and I can't afford to travel to California, or I can't afford to take time off work, I can't go. But now that people are so used to this, I think it'll provide an opportunity for a lot more people to attend events that they otherwise couldn't have for a variety of reasons. So I think it is a good. My opinion is it's a good thing that it's going to stay, and it's nice to hear that um, in a relatively quick amount of time, you and I guess other people who do what you do, but there probably aren't any like Loudon, have been able to get these events off, without a hitch, and everybody is happy and feels included.
Yeah, and like you were saying, people, if you don't think about it, it's not something you're gonna do, right? So my best friend from high school, unfortunately, her dad passed away, and she invited me to come to Pennsylvania to attend the church service in person, and I really wanted to go, but with 2 kids and going through all normal mom life stuff and working, I was like, it was just not gonna work. So I
Mhm.
called her up and I said, I want to be there, and I will be there if I can't make this happen for you. I said, but what I'd like to do is gift you with handling a virtual memorial piece for you. And she was like, "Are you sure?" And I don't know how many people would want to do that. And she thought about it just during the 5 minutes more of the phone call. And she's like, "Well, that church has Zoom set up because they do Sunday.
Mhm. Mhm.
They already have it for Sunday services." So she just made a quick phone call to the reverend, and we talked, and it was pretty easy. He just had to turn on the feed, right?
Mhm.
And that way there were I want to say like 10 to 12 people that now, because she could do it, she was able to send out. And so that made me feel good that, like, at least got the message out for her people, right?
Mhm.
But then I'm doing an in-person event, and the same thing, it didn't occur to them to do a virtual piece. So I wrote
Mhm.
and said, hey, the lake house where the venue is, they have screens, so I can bring my camera and we'll be all set. And so now, like, so many more people can celebrate her life.
Mhm.
So yeah, I appreciate you having me on so that we can spread the message, because it is unique and
Mhm.
different. But I like we talked about, I think it is going to be something more and more people think about. Just as in April of 2020, the first birthday Zoom I did, by the
Mhm.
next April, everybody was throwing birthday Zooms, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way in a relatively short period of time. But I wanted to ask one other question before
Sure.
we go, and I can't believe I didn't think about this earlier. Um, I'm sure there are some people who have not attended a funeral since COVID has happened, whether it's because they're just, they were lucky enough to not, have someone close to them pass away, or they couldn't for a variety of reasons. Like I know in the beginning.
Uh-oh. Where'd she go?
I got kicked off. I don't know what happened, but
I'm like, that's
I
all just stay.
I know in the beginning with all the restrictions, my understanding was people could not have a funeral the way that they could pre-COVID, even if they wanted to. So can you maybe tell people like how COVID has impacted funerals directly, and if we're still experiencing that, or if reopening, we're not seeing those restrictions anymore?
Yeah, I haven't talked to anyone lately, but I do know that in the midst of COVID, it was like 10 people total, right? And so
Right,
how do
right.
you limit that, right? And a lot of people just elected to not even really do anything. They were just, I talked to a lot of people who lost loved ones, not necessarily from COVID, but other things. And they were like,
Hmm.
we'll just do it later.
Hmm.
And what I think is, it's never going to happen later. And that makes me sad because, at some point you don't go back and say, I'm going to throw a celebration of life a year plus later.
Hmm.
But who knows? That's still an option. But a lot of the funeral homes just really set up this one directional live feed from the funeral home. But yeah, I think it's definitely not back to fully normal. I don't think it's there yet,
Hmm.
just because there are so many people that are not vaccinated yet or willing to travel.
Hmm.
And but I haven't talked. What I made a conscious decision not to bother the funeral homes during the COVID time period because the original plan was in January, February of 2020. I had a method of where I was going to go and meet with them and propose a partnership kind of thing, and because I'm not in any way trying to take business away from a funeral home. I'm not embalming anyone anytime soon. Like this is not what this is all just for the folks that were electing not to have it the
Hmm.
party in a funeral home to like give them other options to do it at home and other things. So, but as I make a decision to get back out there and talk to them, that's an excellent question to kind of find out from them if they are back at like 80%, 90%. I think it's like a lot of the businesses I've talked to though that a lot of people are still not back to
Hmm.
being 100% um, pre-COVID
Hmm.
numbers or anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and again though, the funeral industry was already being disrupted before COVID hit, and so now I think that with COVID, people may start electing even more now to not do the same type of church service, go to the gravesite, like they may elect do a smaller intimate thing and then party later and have a more of um, a celebration and also um, thinking about the legacy and doing other things, making it more of a production about the life that was lived, right? Instead of grieving and being sad. So who knows? I don't know. It's hard because a lot of the people I've helped recently are folks that knew that their loved ones were sick for a while, right? So
Hmm.
it's the more sudden stuff that can be
Hmm.
like a whole different way of handling it. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, Laden, this has been great. Seriously, you provided so much information. I mean, I knew what you did, but I had no idea all of the things that you did. So I think it's going to be really helpful for people to hear all the options that they have and the interesting things like the divorce parties and all of those things. I never thought about that. So
Those numbers went up during COVID also.
So yeah, if anybody again has any questions for Laden and you're watching the replay, put them in the chat. We'll get them answered. But Laden specializes in basically helping you organize any sort of event, would you say it's mostly end of life or?
No, I think I feel like it's just celebrations, but again, celebrations that may be a little bit you don't normally think to celebrate. So, like, oh, can I say this? I don't just at the end you can censor this out. But I'm having a breast reduction, and I'm going to have a goodbye to the tatas party. So, why not, right?
No, I wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah, and people don't think to celebrate when they get pregnant after a long bout of infertility. They celebrate the baby, but what about celebrating this big milestone of maybe it could even be years of infertility, right? Or you've just started your own business. You should totally have a party to celebrate that. So
That is a good idea.
Yeah, and someone just told me I should hold a bark mitzvah for their 13-year-old dog.
Okay.
We could go all day.
Any creative party that you want to host, Loudon can help you put that together. And it can be hybrid, virtual, and in person for everybody's comfort and ease on their pocketbook now that we all have the technology. So thank you, Loudon, so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with before we go?
I just want to thank you for being such a wonderful host and interviewer. Look at you, Miss Oprah, future Oprah. And then also just thankful that all the small business owners that I've become friends with and how we help one another. So appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. And then another thing I wanted to mention just before Loudon gets off, she also hosts Taboo Talks. And I actually was a guest speaker on one of her Taboo Talks. So every time that they have a meeting, they talk about obviously something that's taboo that, people don't normally like to talk about. So I'll put a link for the Facebook group in there. If you guys want to check that group out, maybe Loudon can come on another time and talk about that.
Love it. Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
You too, Loudon. After I end the broadcast, stay on because we can both be here and chat for a second. But thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye.